the thing at the minute is it's very hard to make art without including the context of COVID. I spent the majority of the first lockdown outside in my garden, and I knew because of that that it would have to be my inspiration. It was in my head for months, but I just didn't know how I was going to use it in the end. It wasn't until my dad said about a drug raid that had happened where the police had been able to infiltrate a secret communication system of this huge underground company. It eventually ended up with the arrest of about 700 people, but it was because of this that I realised that lives didn't stop because of COVID. The world still kept moving. It was just that all other events had kind of been ignored because of this virus. So the idea for my project was to bring attention to these other world events, which then brought me to the connection between the insects and the nature in the garden to these ignored world events. I first started this project by looking into nature, of making tiles of garden scenes, firstly by plaster moulds and then by clay. I decided, rather than making them the traditional flower prints using grass and flipping pressed and then squashed into the clay, I decided to make it out of things that I would have to have around the home because we were so limited in what we had. So I made these out of buttons, string and even earbuds in part of it. For this project there was a lot of research that had to go into it, firstly with the socio-political problems that I had to look into, but then also the insects that I wanted to use had to be very specific, as their biology or their social upbringings in a way. I wanted them to link back to the political problems that I'd been looking into. So I thought that I had to present this finding in some sort of way, and I brought to mind these cards, these playing cards that I've had since I was young, that have dinosaurs on them, and they say what kind of period they were around in and their height. So I decided to include this in my work by making my own set of playing cards with my choice of insects on them and their Latin names. After this I was a little bit stuck with the project, so I decided to do 100 drawings overall, which ended up to about 25 drawings per insect that I picked. Sometimes it was a bit tedious, I just wanted to give it up, but I'm so glad that I kept on with all these drawings that I was churning out, because they actually helped me with my inspiration for things that I was going to move on to. Particularly the forms that were involved in the drawings that I made. As I looked into the forms with these drawings, it then led me on to the metal sculptures of each insect. I wanted them to be different sizes to play on the fact that it's going from something very, very small in the ground up to person size eventually in the project. By making them being stuck in the studio, it means that we have to experiment with what we have to hand, which I've had fun with really, because it means that I just have to experiment with how I want them to be set out really. Particularly the ladybird, I just hung it from a random nail that was stuck in the wall, and the way it just held itself naturally to me looked like an insect was actually crawling down the wall rather than a sculpture that had been placed with care on a particular stand or plinth. Eventually, I'm hoping this project will lead me to making costumes. The idea behind this is making insect characters in order to act out their own versions of these socio-political issues. I think by doing these characters will enable me to join these two worlds that I had experienced. On the one side you have the segregated garden world in which I basically just watched the world happen around me, and also all these problems that people in other countries had to experience, as well as the virus that was killing thousands of people with them.